Welcome all. Thank you for joining us for a public workshop on the update to California's Extreme Heat Action Plan, co-facilitated by the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, or LCI, and the California Natural Resources Agency, or CNRA. This update reflects current state extreme heat actions and priorities from across agencies, departments, boards, commissions, and conservancies. A quick note that this call is being held as a meeting, and you will have the opportunity to unmute yourself and participate in the conversation during our breakout rooms. Because it's a smaller group today, we're most likely not going to be having breakout rooms, but we appreciate your contributions and questions throughout our conversation. In the meantime, as we give a quick update on the Extreme Heat Action Plan, please keep your volume muted. Feel free to use the chat or Q&A for any questions. Our workshop is slated to take about 90 minutes. After our welcome and introduction, we will do a quick overview of the Extreme Heat Action Plan. We will then proceed to track specific conversations where individuals can give direct feedback on the action tracks and provide additional responses to plan-wide questions. We'll then give a quick overview of other state-related state resources before concluding our call. Thank you again for joining us today. My name is Catherine Foster, and I'm a senior planner at the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, or LCI. I'm joined by our program manager for the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Program, Braden Kay, associate planner Riley Barlett, and senior planner Kim Danko. From our partner, the California Natural Resources Agency, we have Jen Phillips, Assistant Secretary for Climate Change. And I'll pass now to Riley for a quick poll. So poll number 1 is, where are you joining us from? Bay Area, Central Coast, Central Valley, LA, North Coast, Sacramento Valley, Sierra Range or Foothills, and Southern California. Our second question is, what sector do you work in? We have academia, CBO, or community-based organization, for-profit, local and regional government, nonprofit, state government, or other. And our third question is, which action track are you most interested in talking about? So track A is build public awareness and notification. Track B is strengthen community services and response. Track C is increase resilience of our built environment. Track D is utilize nature-based solutions. And then we have no preference or you're interested in all tracks. So I'll give you a minute to work through that poll. Thank you, Riley. I see we have our poll results. It looks like we're an even split between nonprofits and state government. It looks like we're mostly calling in from the Sacramento Valley in Southern California, so thank you for joining us. And then it looks like we're most interested in learning about track C or interested in all, or potentially no preference, but I'm going to read that as interested in all. So thank you for responding to our polls. We appreciate your feedback. I'd now like to pass to Jen Phillips for a brief overview of the Extreme Heat Action Plan. Welcome, Jen.
Thanks, Catherine. And thank you all for joining us after hours. Really appreciate you being here. I wanted to just frame out a little bit about our 2026 Extreme Heat Plan and give you some context and history before we dive into hearing from you. So California's Extreme Heat Action Plan, a state strategy for protecting Californians from extreme heat, was just recently posted for public comment in late February, and we have this public comment period open now through early April. The 2026 draft provides a really strategic and comprehensive set of actions that the state is taking to build resilience to extreme heat. It outlines all of the various activities that the state is undertaking, of course, at the California Natural Resources Agency and the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate and innovation, but also so many other agencies and players across the state. And it really looks to how are we tackling the many different impacts of extreme increasing average temperatures and episodic heat waves. The plan is organized around four tracks that we'll dive into today that organize all of the actions of the plan. Track one is public awareness. Track two is all about community response. Track three is focused on the built environment, and track four is about utilizing nature-based solutions. So the draft 2026 extreme heat plan is really an update of the state's 2022 extreme heat action plan, which was developed as we were updating the 2021 California climate adaptation strategy. So the climate adaptation strategy is sort of the umbrella framework for how the state is building resilience to the many different impacts that we face from climate change. And as we were updating that strategy, we realized that we really needed a concerted and standalone focus on extreme heat. So that is where the 2022 extreme heat plan comes from. This 2022 extreme heat plan builds on a guidance memo from 2013 called Preparing California for Extreme Heat and its recommendations. So with each subsequent update of this plan, we're really looking at what we've done in the past and really expanding and building upon that. Next slide, please. So this is just a screenshot of the draft 2026 Extreme Heat Action Plan that is posted now online. And as I mentioned, it's organized around these four tracks. And within each of the four tracks, there are a total of 13 goals. The four tracks and the goals within those tracks were selected through the Extreme Heat Action Plan in 2022 and continue to really be a framework for the 2026 draft. Each of the goals within the tracks include two different types of actions. So we have the tracks, the goals, and the actions. And then within the goals, there are these two different types of actions. One action category is called established actions. So these are obviously activities that the state is already initiating or doing to really tackle and address extreme heat. The other category of actions are called recommended actions, and these are outlining really important needs from the state's perspective, but they have not yet started. So implementation might require new or additional resources, but it is our attempt at the state to be really transparent about where we want to go to really address and tackle extreme heat. Within those established actions, under those established actions, there are examples of relevant programs or projects or initiatives that are really helping to advance and implement those actions. This is not comprehensive by any means, but it gives a snapshot of the various activities that are advancing those established actions and also provide more resources about programs, grant opportunities, and initiatives happening across the state on extreme heat. Next slide. So this update to the 2026 Extreme Heat Action Plan is called for in Senate Bill 306, which was signed in 2023. And it specifically stipulates that the state should be updating the action plan every 3 years, and the next update of this plan should be published on July 1st, 2026. So this graphic on your screen is sort of showing our process of updating the Extreme Heat Action Plan. At the top, there was a lot of internal staff and prep work to really think about what needed to go into this update. We worked a lot across our colleagues, across the many agencies in California in the summer and fall of 2025. And then we did some early engagement and outreach to essentially produce the public comment draft that's now live online. Now we're in this period of this 6 to 8 week public comment period where we're really hoping to get a lot of input and feedback from all of you. And then that input and feedback will really help us finalize the Extreme Heat Action Plan due in July of 2026. We do envision, since it's now charged or called for us to be updating the plan every 3 years. We envision following, obviously, this sort of model in updating the plan every 3 years. And importantly, because the plan is spread out these 3 years, we also see a strong focus on continuing to implement the actions called for in the plan and really work in a coordinated way across state agencies so that we have a cohesive strategy on extreme heat. Next slide, please, Catherine. So as with the 2022 Extreme Heat Action Plan, we really see this as an all-of-government approach. Yes, these two agencies on the line are coordinating this update, but we are working so closely across 15 plus agencies and the many, many departments, boards, and commissions and conservancies that are a part of those agencies. Collectively, this coordination has led to a combination of 126 recommended and established actions that are outlined in the draft 2026 Extreme Heat Action Plan. Next slide. So this is a snapshot. I've sort of talked through this, but this is a snapshot of where we're at in the Extreme Heat Action Plan update timeline. So as I mentioned, we've had a lot of internal interagency conversations, done some early engagement and outreach in the summer and early fall of 2025, put our heads down and drafted the plan in the fall and early winter, and now we are in this public comment period so that we can release the plan in July of 2026. We'll talk a little bit more about this, I'm sure, in the discussion, but in the updated draft for this plan, we have 24% of all the actions in this new plan are new from the 2022 action plan. So they were not included in the 2022 action plan, or they were perhaps included as recommended actions, and now they are established actions, meaning this work is underway in the state of California. 32% of all the actions in the 2026 plan are considered updated, which means they were in some way, shape, or form in the 2022 plan, but they've been modified in their language and also the many different agencies or departments that are supporting advancing those actions. Just a reminder, the public comment period has been open since late February. We have posted the draft of the Extreme Heat Action Plan on both of our websites at the Resources Agency and the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation. So that is open for public comment now. We're obviously kicking off our engagement and outreach this week, and we will have time also scheduled in the next several weeks for in-person sessions as well. I'm going to pass now to my colleague Braden Kay to talk more about the details of this public comment period.
Thank you so much, Jen. So the Extreme Heat Action Plan public comment period is currently open and will close April 8th. Individuals can provide written feedback via email, mail, and through a survey posted both on the LCI and CNRA web pages. Next slide. During the public comment period, CNRA and LCI will also be hosting a series of virtual and in-person workshops. So we've done the workshops today. Tomorrow we will have one more workshop. So tell your friends there's still an opportunity to attend tomorrow's virtual workshop. We're also doing 3 in-person workshops in Redding, Riverside, and Fresno between March 16th and April 1st. CNRA and LCI are also co-facilitating a tribal roundtable to work with tribes. More detail for those events, including registration details, can be found on the CNRA and LCI websites. We also share links as part of our follow-up email. CNRA and LCI are also planning on highlighting EHAP at other events throughout the month of March, and we welcome any additional opportunities that you may know about to highlight the Extreme Heat Action Plan update. So before we move into breakout rooms, I'd like to give a quick overview of the 4 action tracks that Jen mentioned of the Extreme Heat Action Plan and their respective goals. And this will give you a little bit of a highlight into the conversations that we'll be having this evening, because we'll provide opportunity to have a discussion about each of these tracks. So track A, build public awareness and notification. This includes a goal around public awareness building through targeted communications and campaigns, a second goal around actionable climate science, and a third goal around improving accuracy and accessibility of heat modeling and data to inform decision making. Track B is strengthening community services and response. So this includes Goal 1, invest in social resilience. Goal 2, protect California workers and economy from the impacts of extreme heat. And Goal 3, supporting local planning and response measures to extreme heat events. Then next slide, we have Track C, increase resilience of our built environment. That includes Goal 1, protect critical infrastructure. Goal 2, support heat resilient and cooler communities through relevant regulation and codes. Goal 3, invest in cool buildings and surfaces. And Goal 4, utilize science-based frameworks and tools. And then last but not least, track D, use nature-based solutions. Goal 1, promote nature-based solutions to reduce extreme heat risks. Goal 2, support nature's ability to withstand and adapt to increasing temperatures. And Goal 3, reduce heat risk to water supply and systems. So now I'm going to pass it over to Catherine to talk about the discussion that we're about to have.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Braden. Thank you so much, Jen. So for our earlier conversation, the one that took place at 10 a.m., we had breakout rooms. Because we're in a smaller group today, we're just going to work our way through the various tracks. We're going to start with track D, so we're going to reverse the order slightly. Bear with me one moment while I move the slides to track D, and I want to ask Jen Phillips from the California Natural Resources Agency to present on track D. Just a quick note that we have a series of questions at the end of each track. We'll welcome your thoughts and feedback on the track after we review it. Also welcome any questions you might have about the track itself, the contents, and the plan generally. So we have track D, utilize nature-based solutions, and I'll ask Jen to present.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. So this track, Utilize Nature-Based Solutions, talks a little bit about, how do we both think about harnessing the power of nature to be a really important tool and buffer in the face of increasing temperatures and heat waves, and also how do we support nature to withstand those increasing temperatures. So kind of thinking about both things is how do we build healthy ecosystems that can be a real tool for us in the face of extreme heat, and then also how are we protecting nature in these changing conditions. So those are 2 of the goals, and then the third goal is all about reducing the heat risk to California's critical water supply and systems that run throughout the state. Just to back up a little bit though, when we talk about nature-based solutions, we are really thinking about how, again, are we working with, enhancing, and harnessing nature to help address many different challenges we face. So this could be challenges, of course, in the face of climate change, but also how do we use nature to really protect public health, increase equity and public access, and protect biodiversity. So nature-based solutions are our efforts to restore and manage and conserve the many different habitats and environments throughout California so they can really help us tackle these several challenges. When we think about nature-based solutions, we think about how are we creating healthy forests and watersheds and wetlands and ag lands to be a critical tool in the face of climate change. So I've talked a little bit about the goals here, but really, I just want to underscore that right now, in California, we are really, really committed to supporting our natural systems to adapt and promote the expansion of nature-based climate solutions across the state. So the actions in this track really focus on, harnessing the best available science, utilizing meaningful partnerships to build California's resilience and protect communities from extreme heat. For a lot of the activities in this track, you'll also see that we really think about how we are um, using tribal expertise and traditional ecological knowledge and really recognizing how critical and grounding those scientific efforts are for scaling nature-based solutions that really can sustain over time and sustain in changing conditions. I'm happy to answer any questions about what we mean when we talk about nature-based solutions, but it's so many different activities across our restoration, management, and conservation of California's lands. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned in our brief overview of the Extreme Heat Action Plan, we have the four action tracks. We have the goals, and then we have actions within those goals. And the established actions, so those activities that are already underway at the state, highlight example programs and resources and initiatives that the state is taking to advance those established actions. So here are a few example resources and programs that are featured throughout Track D, the Utilize Nature-Based Solutions track. I won't go through them, one by one, but just want to let you know that these are a few different resources. So, at a very high level, we highlight some work happening at the Department of Resources, Recycling, and Recovery on community composting to really recognize how compost can help expand and improve publicly accessible green spaces. Our work at the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection has an urban and community forestry program that really works to increase tree canopy and importantly also includes, the critical care of trees so that those trees can sustain over time and be an asset in the fight against extreme heat. And then lastly, our work at the State Water Resources Control Board includes a drinking water state revolving fund and a clean water state revolving fund. And these are two activities that can help mitigate drinking water risks and really support access to water and improve water quality for humans. So those are a few things, again, just examples within the plan, but just to show you the many different ways our agencies and departments and boards are advancing extreme heat. Next slide. So we'd love to hear from you all. I know we're going to go track by track, but I'd love to hear from you all specifically on Track D, Utilize Nature-Based Solutions. How are your priorities reflected in this track across the many actions? What of your priorities are missing? And also, if you haven't had time to really dig into the plan yet, we'd love to also just hear any general comments or questions you have about Track D as we're working to refine and then finalize the extreme heat plan. So since it's a small group, please just unmute, raise your hand, come off video, and share any thoughts or any questions you have about this track as we dive in. And I know we haven't made space for broader questions. So of course, if you have broader questions as you're looking through the plan, or if anything we've said has raised questions, please let us know.
Hello, everybody. I guess I'll start. My name's Ephraim.
Great.
I'm in the Central Valley. How the priorities for the track reflect and the include actions. Um, on two of them, the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, because we're coming up with a fire emergency plan for our small town, and also our drinking water. We have arsenic, so we're getting bottled water from Self Help now, which helps. And we have another program going on from UC Berkeley, the Gadgill Project. Not sure if any of y'all are familiar with that. Um, but those are the two the ones that come up for me. Um, and those are two main priorities right now. So thank y'all. That's all I got.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing that. And also, it's great to know where you're all coming from too, and that perspective. So I appreciate that.
Hi, I can go next as well. My name is Jay Sho. I'm based in the Los Angeles area, specifically in the city of Alhambra. For me, I don't know if this would fit more on track A, but just making sure that there's accountability to make sure that there's translation in major local languages, that there's outreach in communities that are specific in certain areas, like places prefer radio or text or phone alerts. Would love to make sure that there's a focus on schools. I know that students and children tend to be more vulnerable in these areas. Make sure that they have access to shade, drinking water. Yeah, that would be my feedback so far.
That's great. Thank you so much. And yeah, it's feel free to share other feedback beyond just track D as we're going to go through the other tracks. So I'll let the team dive in to give everyone a bit of a orientation to each of them. But these comments are great. And on the schools piece, this actually came up a bit in our conversation this morning. So we have a great green schoolyards program that is within our urban and community forestry program at Cal Fire. And that green schoolyards program, I think, is highlighted a couple different places in the plan, but definitely mentioned in track D. So we're trying to also recognize those efforts that are cross-cutting, that may relate to track A or track D or things like that. So appreciate you sharing all of that. Thank you, Catherine. Catherine's on it, finding the exact call outs of green schoolyards. There comments or questions about track D and nature-based solutions, or general feedback you have on, what you'd like to see reflected in track D, even if you haven't gotten to read the full draft yet? Maybe if not, Catherine, we could go on to the next track, but we can always answer questions about any tracks throughout this evening too.
Absolutely, that sounds great. We'll also share at the end a link to the survey where folks can fill out track-specific feedback as well. So there's space for each of the tracks to provide additional feedback there. I'm going to move us, so we're going back in reverse order. So we're going to go to track C now. So track C is our built environment track. So bear with me while I go back in time to track C. Like I said, track C is the focus on increasing resilience of our built environment. I'll give a quick overview of track C, look at some examples that are relevant to this work, and then welcome your thoughts and questions about this work in track C. So when we think about track C, we're thinking about the built environment comprised of critical infrastructure such as our transportation, energy, and food systems. So during extreme heat events, these same systems are essential for emergency response. As it gets hotter, as temperatures increase and heat waves become more frequent and severe, the cascading impacts of extreme heat infrastructure failings can exacerbate risks to people, our economy, and the environment. Improvements to critical infrastructure and the built environment can bolster resilience to extreme heat events and minimize public health impacts. The built environment track, that's track C, includes actions focused on a variety of infrastructure solutions, including active and passive cooling of buildings, microgrid solutions to help communities maintain power during extreme heat events, and the use of cool materials to reduce the impact of the urban heat island effect. This track is organized around 4 goals. So of all the tracks, track C has the most goals, for 4 being in this case. Goal 1 is protecting critical infrastructure. Goal 2 is supporting heat resilient and cooler communities through relevant regulations and codes. Goal 3 is focused on investing in cool buildings and surfaces. And Goal 4 is focused on utilizing science-based frameworks and tools. For a little bit of background and context, you also see in the draft that a lot of track C is focused on, because it's focused on energy, so there's a lot of reference to CPUC, which is the California Public Utilities Commission, and also CEC, which is the California Energy Commission. I'm going to provide a few different examples of work currently in track C for the draft. I mentioned the Public Utilities Commission, so we have an example here. The CPUC, or the Public Utilities Commission, California Public Utilities Commission, is addressing the need to protect energy supplies to essential services across several rulemakings and programmatic activities, including calls for climate vulnerability assessments every 3 years from California's 3 large energy utilities, includes PG&E. These assessments focus on underserved communities as well as critical infrastructure and examine the vulnerability of electric and gas infrastructure and operations to extreme weather, including extreme heat. We also have Department of Food and Ag within this track. So the Department of Food and Agriculture is working to increase climate-smart agriculture practices that improve crops' resilience to extreme heat to ensure California's working lands are as productive as possible and vulnerable communities can access fresh produce given the impacts of heat. Caltrans is also listed in this track, given the infrastructure focus. Caltrans engages with the communities most vulnerable to climate change impacts to support development and implementation of climate-resilient transportation infrastructure projects. We have the Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program, which includes funding eligibility for comprehensive adaptation plans and sustainable mobility plans. There are also additional examples throughout Track C that I encourage you to look at. A lot of additional mentions of CPUC, like I mentioned, as well as the California Energy Commission. At this time, I welcome your thoughts on Track C. I would love to know if your priorities for the track are reflected in the actions we have included throughout the 4 goals. I would also like to know if any of your priorities are missing. And if you have any general comments and questions about Track C, we welcome those at this time as well. And I'll pause for a moment and see if folks have comments or questions.
If I can, I guess I'll go first again. Um, this one is the one that I was kind of looking at because we're trying to build a new resiliency center in our small town of Allensworth. We had a population of like 600, 700. Many are elderly, um, pretty rural, and just last year we all turned to electric. They got rid of all our propane and we're all electric. So the concern being that when the power goes down, we don't have a cooling center anywhere near we can go or utilize. So that was one of the things that the priorities that I was looking at for us to look at. Um, Also, the investing in building new structures, which would really be helpful for us. We have a elementary school here, goes from K to 8th, but not everybody could fit in there. And if the power goes down, it's pretty much a hot building as well. So these are just kind of concerns we have, trying to get our own resiliency center up with the generator, solar. So that's in the works right now, but it's not there yet, and which is concerning me with the heat coming down. So this is one of the ones that I'll probably be really looking at a little bit more, reading up on it. So thank y'all.
Thank you, Efren. I can pull an example from the draft right now that might be of interest to you. It's Track C, Goal 3, Establish Action 4. speaks directly to the Strategic Growth Council's Community Resiliency Centers program that might be of interest. And this is on page 51. Apologies, the formatting there. It's a little
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
tuned. Chris.
So,
A comment from Joe Show. As an Asian Pacific Islander, apologies.
Oh, it's our nonprofit, Asian Pacific Islander Forum Movement. That's the
Amazing,
org.
amazing. They share they've been working on trying to get microgrids. We found our local IOU played a role in pushing back, which made it more difficult. Cities with Clean Power Alliance was much easier to work with. That's helpful for us to see. I would love to see how we could prioritize actions in highest need communities and if there are ways to create more accountability, like timelines for agencies to follow goals and how progress could be measured. Really appreciate that. Right now, there aren't timelines or progress indicators in the draft. That's something we were exploring potentially for the future. And this is an opt-in plan, so it's not statutorily required for agencies to participate. So they're each essentially responsible for their own evaluation and assessments. But I do know there's a couple items in the plan that directly correlate with supporting vulnerable communities. Track C, Goal 3, Establish Action 2, which is focused on supporting communities and expanding energy assurance, looks at the Department of Community Services and Development's Low-Income Weatherization Program, which is focused on weatherization for low-income households. We also have a link here. I wonder if I can copy this link if it's of interest. This is the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program. This is financial assistance to meet immediate residential heating and or cooling needs. This is linked on page 50 of the draft. I wonder if I can just post it here. This is LAHEAP specifically. Additional comments and questions for track C on energy or built environment interventions? Before we move to track B, I'll also flag that there might be a couple items that are reflected across multiple tracks. So we tend to think of tracks being the big priorities for extreme heat action. But through our own grant program, which is the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Program, the most effective projects are often ones that combine initiatives across the board. So in our earlier conversations when we talked about track C, folks flagged that obviously energy resilience is a big need for their communities, but so is a nature-based solution approach. So combining the two might be the most effective way, say, for improving urban heat or heat impacts more broadly. I'll move us back now to talk about track B. Again, welcome any additional questions you might have through the chat and again through the survey. We'll also might have time at the very, very end to answer any bigger questions you might have. And I'll pass to Kim Danko for an overview of track B.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm going to give a brief overview of Track B. As one of California's deadliest climate threats, extreme heat affects every region of the state, from Central Valley schoolyards to Southern California urban apartment complexes. But the burden of extreme heat is not shared equally. The impacts of extreme heat often fall hardest on low-income families with limited access to cooling, outdoor and indoor workers laboring in dangerous conditions, people experiencing homelessness, California Native American tribes, and disproportionately underserved communities of color who often have fewer resources for heat protection. The actions within this track are a necessary step to ensure that California's communities, especially those on the front lines of the climate crisis, are able to strengthen their resiliency in the face of a warming climate. So the state's action in the community services and response track are organized around 3 goals. Goal number 1, invest in social resilience. Goal number 2, protect California's workers and economy from the impacts of extreme heat. And goal number 3, support local planning and response measures to extreme heat events. So now I'm also going to provide a few example resources and programs that are listed under Track B in the Extreme Heat Action Plan. The Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, or GOBIZ, has a business investment services, which raises awareness of climate risks in the business community and assists businesses to operate with minimal interruption during and after extreme climate events. The Strategic Growth Council's Tribal Capacity Building Program provides funding and technical assistance to California Native American tribes, enhancing their staff capacity to advance tribes' climate-related work. The goal of the pilot program is to help tribes develop long-term capacity to secure funding and implement tribally led climate solutions. And the Division of Occupational Safety and Health's Heat Health Illness Prevention Network is a voluntary public-private partnership established to increase both employers' and employees' awareness of the hazards of heat illness and the importance of heat illness prevention measures. So now that we've had that brief overview, we're also going to ask you to give us any reflections. How are your priorities for this track reflected in the actions? Are any of your priorities missing? Or if you have any general comments or questions about this track, and feel free to just unmute yourselves.
Again, I'd like to say the priorities are there. A lot of our community are field workers. So we work in the Central Valley, so we're out in the heat all the time. Um, and just our whole town is around the harvest and seasonal workers. So this is one that really kind of everybody's aware of. So, but yeah, it seems like we're on track um, on the resiliency.
That's great to hear, Efran. I appreciate hearing that. I will flag again that Goal 2 of Track B is focused on protecting California's workers and economy from the impacts of extreme heat. So you'll find a variety of actions within this goal focused on worker protections. A lot of Department of Industrial Relations, Kalusha mentions in Track B, Goal 2. We also have a comment from Jay Show in the chat. I appreciate that there's recognition on vulnerable communities like people of color and unhoused folks. And just flagging again to make sure to prioritize language access and culturally relevant outreach. Thank you. It's really important for us. Feel free to raise your hand or unmute if you have additional comments on Track B. Otherwise, we'll proceed to Track A in just a moment. Thank you, Efren. Efren shares that we mostly have Spanish-speaking people in our community. So the goal is to translate the Extreme Heat Action Plan into Spanish when it's published before July 1st, 2026. And also hopefully produce additional marketing materials in other languages spoken throughout the state. Thank you. The clapping emoji. Appreciate that. All right, at this time, I'll pass to Braden Kay for an overview of our first but last track for this evening. That's Track A. Bear with me while I go back in the slides to Track A and pass to Braden Kay.
Thank you, Catherine. Track A, build awareness, public awareness and notification. So I'm going to do a brief overview restate the goals, provide a few examples, and then we'll go to the same type of questions we've been answering for the other tracks. So, extreme heat is a threat to social and economic prosperity and significantly impacts public safety and health, especially in California's most vulnerable communities, as we've been hearing through the discussion today. As heat continues to intensify, both in severity and duration, it becomes even more critical that Californians have the resources and information they need to prepare for and respond to this challenge. The public awareness and notification track includes actions focused on strengthening the state's partnerships with heat vulnerable communities, expanding multimodal communication tools centered on heat awareness, and increasing access to vital tools and resources that help decision makers plan for extreme heat events. Uh, the goals include building public awareness around extreme heat through targeted communication campaigns, two, support actual climate science and research to inform risk assessments and decision making. And three, improve accuracy and accessibility of heat modeling and data to inform decision makers. So next slide. Now I'd like to provide a few examples that are listed in Track A in the Extreme Heat Action Plan. One, the Office of Emergency Services released an annual hashtag Beat the Heat campaign, and including a collection of summer heat resources. The 99 Calor campaign targets outdoor workers with the heat illness prevention materials, discussion guides in multiple languages, and external communications about their heat illness prevention standard. The Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment maintains Cal Heat Score, which ranks forecasted heat conditions and impacts in California communities over the next 7 days. The tool highlights vulnerable groups most susceptible to extreme heat, offers tips to stay safe, and lists important resources such as nearby cooling centers. And then the Department of Public Health Center for Preparedness and Response disseminates information to local health jurisdictions and emergency networks, and they coordinate communications through the California Heat Alert Network. So now we can now that you know a little more about Track A, we can begin our discussion. Curious if anyone has thinks of any of their priorities being reflected in this plan and anything that they want to highlight. And then we'll get to the missing question next.
Hi, Braden. It's Laura O'Connor. Can you go back just for a second to the last slide? Whoops, the one that had the different. Okay, great. Thank you. I have a question about the connection between ongoing awareness and education and health care and illness prevention, wellness, all that, and emergency situations, right? So fires, windstorms, floods, all that. And is there a connection between a project that would be preparing for the latter, but also serving a community on an everyday basis in this manner? Are they connected in any way? You can go back to the questions if you like. Thank you for your fluidity. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
I mean, I think that you're asking about, so first of all, A is about awareness, and there's a very strong connection between A and B because it is about like specifically community response and planning in getting ready for a heat wave. From what you said, like I do agree with you. Like as you're planning for heat waves, there's an opportunity to really look at how that corresponds to other potential disasters and other potential threats. And there's a need to sort of see the threat of an extreme heat in light of other potential climate threats or other emergency situations. So I definitely think that your comment makes sense. And I think it's worth highlighting, like, it's worth saying, hey, state agencies, continue to look for these intersections and connections. We heard some folks make some of those connections at our meeting earlier today. Like there was a good one, about the intersection of valley fever and extreme heat, how it's important to make sure that as we're addressing extreme heat in the Central Valley, that we're also doing communications and prevention around valley fever. So, and then you just gave some really good examples just now. So I do think that there is an opportunity to really think about how we're handling response in that way. And then to the other point I think you were making, there is a very distinct relationship between the kind of outreach, plan awareness building that you're doing that that and how that coordinates with response plans. Catherine, do you want to speak to what you're dropping in the chat here?
Yeah, most definitely. We do have in track a goal one, establish action one, a series of related guides and plans that drive public awareness campaigns and outreach efforts. I should also flag in the introduction on page 9, we have a section on distinguishing longer term action from emergency response. So there are a lot of really great plans and products that outline how folks respond to an emergency, and that's sort of embedded in the plan, but the extreme heat action plan is more the overall portfolio that encompasses those emergency response plans as well.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I also think this is something we heard earlier in terms of Jay Show's comment here. You know, how in the EHAB can we be even more explicit about the most vulnerable communities and who's most impacted by heat? And how are we having that conversation with state agencies? We heard some similar conversations this morning. And then we also heard some comments around making sure that we're really thinking about which languages in particular are being communicated for key communities and making sure that we're focused on like which channels are being used for which languages and that we're thinking about that strategically. Our team works on Cal Heat Score, and this is something that we're trying to advise local jurisdictions and tribes and community-based organizations on. So really appreciate those comments as well in the chat. Do we want to get to Jay Show's come and got to a little bit of what's missing or what could be emphasized more? Anything else that people see as missing or want to make sure as part of this conversation? And then, or any general comments or questions about Track A before we wrap up here?
I'm
Or
sure,
do you have another comment?
yeah, I'm sure y'all are already tracking this and probably it's already done, but it's worth saying and noting that in addition to Spanish speaking folks, there are several other languages, obviously, that these materials and engagements in communities would be well to, as soon as possible, engage. I'm just even thinking, even in the Central Valley with the different farmer populations, and different. I would be shocked if you weren't thinking about that already, but it's worth saying.
Yeah, and there's definitely agencies like DIR definitely has like their outreach efforts in many different languages. Heat Ready, which was run by the Office of Community Partnerships and Street Educations, that's getting taken over by CDPH, already is communicating in a variety of languages. We're funding projects that we're paying for translation into a variety of different languages for our grantees. But I think it's a really good point. I think the question is, how do you work with all agencies on these language justice issues and making sure resources are available for translation into all of the languages that people speak? So it's a very good point, and I do think that there's an opportunity for us to continue to elevate that. We heard it loud and clear this morning, and it's really important that we're hearing it again tonight, because we already made some notes of what we heard this morning and the language justice issues, and really making sure that there's resources for translation and that and that state agencies are communicating in as many languages as needed. That's rising in its priority. We keep on hearing it, so we know that we need to have that reflected in the plan and make sure that state agencies are aware of that need. So really appreciate it being an emphasis this evening.
And as you were speaking, I was thinking also disability justice access to information, which I know we have a very strong overall uh, system for in California, but I keep hearing more and more, and my privilege of being not of a disability about how much more I need to pay attention to that personally. So my privilege. So I just want to say that out loud too.
Yeah, no, it's I'm so glad you did. And we had a representative from we have a representative from one or a few different access and functional need community representing organizations this morning, and they also made a point in track A to really emphasize that. I think it's on potentially underemphasized in the track currently and is something that could be highlighted further. The Department of Emergency Services has a whole access and functional needs working group. They activate during emergencies, including I've been activated with them during extreme heat emergencies. So OES has been an incredible leader in this space, and I do think that there's an opportunity for agencies to learn from OES and start to incorporate the need, more consideration of access and uh, you know functional needs in the outreach work that we're doing. So I'm really glad you brought it up, and we had a really good conversation about that already. And OES happened to be in the table also mentioning, hey, we're doing this and more agencies should be doing this. So it's definitely was a part of the conversation this morning. Really glad you brought it up again. Great point, Catherine, on the Department of Aging as well. Really appreciate that, you dropping that in the chat.
Of course, it's currently listed in track A, goal 1, establish action 1. Incredible. Before we move to our closing, I just want to give a moment to anyone who has any outstanding comments or questions for any of the tracks we've spoken about or the plan generally. I know we're still early in our public comment period, but we welcome any additional thoughts, questions within the next 10 minutes or so. There's some great comments in the chat. We appreciate that. Not seeing any additional hands or comments, so we'll proceed to the close of our presentation. As we zip through the tracks that we've looked at already, we have a brief section on state resources. I'm going to ask Braden to do a quick overview of the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Program Round 2.
Thank you so much, Catherine. So I also represent the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Program, which is a grant program within the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation. We had a first round of funding. We funded 45 projects across the state. We now have funding for an additional $27.5 million worth of projects, both funded by the Prop 4 Climate Bond, as well as the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. These projects will be funding infrastructure for extreme heat, so they have to be infrastructure projects. We're expecting about 20 grants that we fund in this round. We just closed the public comment period for our grants, but we plan on having a NOFA come out towards the end of April. If you sign up for our newsletter, which we can put a link to in the chat, you can get more information about this next round of funding. We'll be doing a variety of webinars and public events to make sure folks know about the funding and have the support they need to apply. So you're about to hear from Catherine. There's a variety of funding opportunities available associated with the Prop 4 Climate Bond. This is just one of them, and you'll start to hear a lot about other programs that are opening up that are funding shortly as well. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you, Braden. So as Braden shared, we did want to flag that there are other Prop 4 Climate Bond programs that are available. I'm posting a link in the chat of the California Natural Resources Agency's webpage, which includes a list of all the related programs. You'll also see in the draft at the very beginning, we have an investment in extreme heat paragraph that talks about the role of Prop 4 in extreme heat mitigation. For flagging specifically with the Prop 4 projects, I wanted to flag that the public comment period for the urban greening draft grant guidelines is open now and closes in April. Jen mentioned that project specifically as part of the Track D work we spoke about previously. Again, we want to reiterate that the Extreme Heat Action Plan public comment period is open until April 8th. That's Wednesday, April 8th, end of day. There are additional ways to provide feedback beyond this virtual session. There's a Microsoft form, which I'll link in the chat, and we'll also link in the follow-up email. You're welcome to email us. You're also welcome to send us mail. We're located at 1400 10th Street in Sacramento, kitty corner from the Capitol. We also welcome any additional questions through our direct contacts. So we have a list of our email addresses here. Feel free to reach out to any four of us if you have questions about what we've discussed today. Any additional considerations for extreme heat work. As Braden shared earlier, if there are additional opportunities for us to talk about the development of the Extreme Heat Action Plan, we'd also welcome that. Again, I want to thank you for your time and attention today, especially on a, beautiful day in Sacramento. I hope it's a beautiful day for everyone else. But for spending your evening with us, we really appreciate you and hope you have an excellent evening. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.